This presentation is brought to you by the Zack Foundation, a global philanthropic organization with a focus on poverty, education, and mental health.
Hello, and welcome to General Psychology. I am Professor Zack. In this course, we'll study topics like cognition, learning, perception, memory, social psychology, sexuality, identity, and mental disorders, as well as a host of other topics, including the history of psychology. So thank you for joining me. I hope that you enjoy. Anyway, my background is I teach both business and psychology. So I teach marketing, management, international business, teach psychology, also teach things like consumer behavior and stuff like that. I'm an international psychologist and researcher. What that means is I go around the world and help develop psychological programs for organizations in needs, countries in needs, people in need. So I do research in South Africa and Peru as well. So I also travel, I have a business, and I buy real estate and things like that. I buy small companies, so kind of like venture capital, and invest in things. And it's kind of like, I started out as a business person first, and later when I got a PhD in psychology. I do philanthropy work, I have a foundation, and I just travel around the world. Things like that. All right, psychology as a science. So, what is psychology? Anybody want to give it a shot? Give their own definition of what they think psychology is? An idea of what psychology is? How important psychology is? Yes?
I was just going to say like the study of the mind and like thought.
Yeah, definitely the study of the mind, thought. What else? Anything else anybody want to add? What else goes with our mind and our thoughts? Yes?
Like behavior.
There you go, right? Human behavior. Why we are who we are. Why we think the way we think. Why we believe the way we believe. Right? Why we treat others the way we treat others. Why we can't pay attention. Why we do pay attention. Right? How we perceive the world. How you guys perceive me. How you perceive yourself. Who are you? Who are you to yourself? Who are you to your friends? Who are you to your family? Who are you to the world? So in my opinion, psychology is probably one of the greatest subjects you can understand because it deals with you. And that's very important. And most people don't know themselves. It takes a very long time. By the time they get to know themselves, they're very old. Because we're normally under conditioning. You guys have been conditioned by who? Who have you been conditioned by so far? Up to this point in your life? Society? Who else? Parents? Yeah, absolutely. Right? Which is neither negative nor positive. It just is. Right? So a lot of things we talk about will be perceived as, this seems like a negative thing or positive things, but relatively it's just subjective, right? It just is, right? And we can try to understand why, but we don't want to take these notions of like, oh man, that's very bad. That's very good, right? Because psychology is human nature. We're human beings. We are all pretty much the same, 99.99% the same. And we're developed by human nature. We have cells within us. And we behave in similar ways, pretty much about 90% similar, and maybe some deviations based on some other factors. Psychology also deals with illnesses, mental illnesses that people suffer, based off a lot of parameters, biological things, but also environmental things. Who wants to do me a favor and go to the, what's like the technical room where they can see if they can adjust this to come assist? What's that? Do you mind seeing if they can assist? They were kind of, thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, if you just make it better, swear over the seat. Okay. That normally helps. Can you get those back there? Or just- Thank you. So the purpose of this course is to make it exciting, right? I've been a lifelong student. I know what it's like to sit there and hear boring lectures, have a boring professor, not interested in the topic. I don't want that here, right? Not long ago, I was in you guys, seats looking up thinking like, why do I need to learn this? If I'm not gonna use it in my life. What's the purpose of this? Well, psychology is extremely important. Because really, you can adapt psychology to use in any measure of your life. Psychology is marketing. Hey, why'd you buy that sweatshirt? Because they influence you to buy it for whatever reason based on your history. Hey, I like that color. I like that particular style, right? I like that hat. I want to buy that. So everything you do is you made a psychological decision based on your history, who you just are as an individual, some other factors, environmental factors, social, where you live, things like that. And also who you want to be, or who you perceive yourself to be. So, yes, this should be an interesting class, and I want you guys to engage, because the best part of the class is talking, having discussions, right? We're dealing with psychology, so we're dealing with introverts and extroverts, right? Not long ago, I sat in the back of the class, so I can do stuff like the teacher does, which is neither here nor there, doesn't matter, but the point is, this is all psychology. Everything you do, how you talk, how you walk, how you perceive, what you're thinking right now. So it should be exciting, and everybody should contribute, right? There's no dumb answers, there's no wrong answers. We're all treated as equals. I'm equal to you, you're equal to me, right? I'm not just Professor Ross just up there talking. We have to treat each other so that we're intellectually equal. Right? We have the same capacity to learn, all of us. So yeah, we're gonna have some dialogue in the class. I want everybody to engage and ask good questions. Ask questions about anything, Ask questions that you're curious about, because that's what learning is, and we want to get our money's worth here, right? So, psychology employs empirical research. What is empirical? Well, empirical approach. What is empiricism? Or empirical research, or empirical data? Good. Were you raising your hand? Were you? Okay. I thought you were raising your hand. Well, empirical data, empirical research, just scientific method, right? You're using things to gather, to analyze. You're not just coming up with opinions, right? You're actually done real studies with people and got some actual information together and do some analysis. In this class, we're going to study what attempts to mislead about psychology, right? All these so-called myths about psychology. We only use 10% of our brain. That's not correct, okay? All these different things we perceive about psychology, like, hey, I thought it was this, I thought it was that. We'll try to debunk those. So, like I said, it requires a scientific attitude, curiosity, skepticism, a little bit of humility too, which means we don't want to try to perceive things in a way, right? We just want to come with a blank slate, ask questions, and try to figure out exactly what is psychology. I want to ask these two questions that find to be relevant right now. So psychology is a science. A lot of people think psychology is a pseudoscience, right? It's kind of a hodgepodge of science and other things, but psychology is, in my opinion, purely scientific. Because the research is asking people various amount of things, collecting data, all the scientific methods and processes we use for finding out anything, right? Particular theories. things like that. Yes. Yeah, just a little, trying to see if I can get a little bit dimmer. So,
Oh, I see. It might be the best that you can turn the lights off. That's all right with you. Just because this projector's on the brightest. The lamp might be dying. I can see if I can get you a new one. My next class.
There's no way to like keep the backlights on and.
That would be a fair assumption, but I think it's one switch.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine. If it has to work, it has to work. Okay. Oh, you know what? One more thing.
Yeah.
Do you have a clicker that I can borrow?
A clicker, yes. I can get you one for today if it's important.
Yeah,
or is-
and I'll drop it back.
Okay.
I have mine on the disregard.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah, I got mine.
I'll be right back with it.
Thank you. All right, psychology as a science, critical thinking. We examine assumptions. So psychology, you make assumptions, right? You don't know what certain things are, so you assume certain things. And that's when you start with good questions. We appraise the source, which means they're basically people who've already done studies or subjects that we're talking about. Discern hidden biases. We all have biases. We are all biased in some degree to something. Right? We're biased based on people we're around or not in our groups or what have you. Evaluate evidence and assess conclusions. This is all part of the scientific method of analyzing. So it has a picture of a baby up here, and babies are probably the most interesting to study because they're in the development of like just ridiculous amount of growth, right? They're gonna have to learn how to do all these exponential things in a short amount of time. And so their brains are very interesting to study. One thing we know about babies in particular, babies at a certain point suffer from stranger anxiety. Right? And so you think stranger anxiety is when it sees a face it does not recognize, babies cry. They're like, well, why does a baby cry around me or this person or that person? Because babies have good facial recognition, right? And they cry when they see strangers. But that's an innate sort of natural process, and we all have that as well too as adults, right? And that goes from an evolutionary standpoint to see strangers as a threat. Right? I don't know this person, right? You don't know me, right? So, or you don't know even your classmates, so it gives sort of uncomfortable sense of something, right? These are all evolutionary things within us from hundreds of thousands of years ago that we still have. And then when we get to know one another, we become a little bit more accustomed and comfortable, and we tend to open up a little bit more. So that's that whole process right there. So the book talks about psychology's first laboratory, particularly just talks about, we think of it, you kind of look at it like physics when you're looking at the atoms of the mind, right? Your mind is made up of neurons, right, which are cells that transmit information. So we're looking at atoms of the mind and essence. First school of thought was Tishner, structuralism, technique of introspection, functionalism. We don't have to worry about that right now. We'll get into all that technical stuff later. So in psychology, we have the APA, American Psychological Association, which is basically like a big organization that helps the field of psychology. Right? It talks about our first female researcher was Whitney Hawkins. First female PhD was Flora Washburn. So it shows that psychology has been diversified and more inclusive in the recent past. Let's get that. Anyone familiar with Freud, with Sigmund Freud? Anybody have anything to offer? Yes.
I think he studied like kind of like developmental, and like he kind of studied like developmental things like here and what I recall.
Yes. Yeah, Freud looked at the development of the human person and
switch on the side of it. It's turned on.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, so Freud dealt with human development, which is, Freud is essentially like a founder of Western psychology, right? Psychology's been around a long time, it's just been given different names. Let's say psychology derived essentially from philosophy. This observation of why we are, why we exist, what is our role in the world, why we do the things we do. Well, Freud really took it to a whole new level when he started to pinpoint more subject matter, studying people, studying their dreams, why you have particular dreams that you have, and looking at mental illnesses and things of that nature. Freud talked about three principal kind of versions of yourself. Anybody know what that is? Kind of the three U's, you could call it. Anybody know? Okay. The id, the ego, the superego, right? The id is sort of your natural response to things. Hey, I'm hungry, I need to eat, I need to use the restroom. Sexual arousal, you see someone you're attracted to, things of that nature, right? And let's say the superego deals with sort of morality principles. Once you determine what is good and bad in the world, what is good and evil, what is right and wrong. And those come from various sources, right? Your environment, your conditioning, learned behavior. And then your ego is supposed to be your balance between the two, right? Which means your balance between morality and your just natural basic instincts to do certain things. And your ego is supposed to be the balance. Right? So essentially kind of look at the id and the superego is kind of like an angel and a devil on each one of your shoulders. You kind of picture that, and then the ego is in the middle, kind of balancing between the two. And someone's, let's just say others, superego may be a bit larger than others, right? But also their id could be larger than others as well too. So some people may develop things that make them not have any sense of morality at all. They're not moral, they're not ethical. We could kind of identify those people as what you call sociopaths. And then some people are more righteous, like you may say, than others. They have a larger morality than others, which means their superego is a lot bit larger than others, and they probably have a smaller id. They're not compulsive to eat so much. They're not compulsive to be gluttonous, want this, and that, buy excessive amount of things, do excessive amount of things, which can be harmful, right? Whether it's substance abuse or alcohol, sex, these types of things, right? Because those are all kind of natural compulsions to satisfy something. So yeah, that is a pretty important thing to remember in terms of Freud, kind of the three versions of yourself, right? You're constantly making these decisions in your head about how to act and react to certain things. Right? Another thing to note, sociopaths and psychopaths are a little bit different. Right? Sociopaths are typically born. Right? Psychopaths are typically not. Yeah. Any questions? I see a hand. So in the 1960s, we had humanistic psychology, which found behaviorism and Freudian psychology to be kind of too limiting. Freud kind of dictated a lot of things to sex and aggression. He said those were kind of the basic principles of why we do what we do innately, right? By natural impulses to procreate, to fight, right? Men's bodies are typically made to fight one another, right? And so we always are combative in some sense for the world. because we're fighting to find the best mate possible and protect what is ours and gain new territories and new things like that. So we have to understand just the basic of human nature here, right? And once again, we say, hey, are these things bad or good? I don't know. These things are subjective, right? But we must understand basic processes of human nature, why we need certain things, why we do certain things. Same goes for sports, right? You guys are competitive, you want to win, right? Aggression comes out in certain ways, you're trying to beat the competition. Sports itself is basically sort of an ancient thing, you know? It's something that's always been inside of us to compete. We just found new ways to classify it and put new rules and ways to do things. College, you know, basketball, baseball, things like that. Rogers and Maslow. Have you guys ever heard of Maslow? Okay. The Maslow hierarchy of needs and things like that. Focus on the needs of love, acceptance, and environment that nurtures or limits personal growth. That's particularly where Maslow and Rogers focus on, trying to figure out our acceptance within society, our love for each other, and how that environment kind of nurtures us to be better human beings overall. That kind of derives from what they call positive psychology. Positive psychology looks to enable these things, nurturing and love and acceptance, in order so that people can live a better life. So positive psychology deals with quality of life. What are some other types of psychology that you guys know of? Besides like just basic general psychology, mind, right? Yeah, but what are actually some actual subjects within psychology we can name? Think of like clinical psychology. Any other forms of psychology you know of? Yes.
Forensic.
Yeah, forensic psychology, right? Trying to understand crimes and things like that, the behavior of perpetrators, you know, why they do what they do, how they move, how they find this person, what's their next move. What else? Anything else? Social psychology, where we look at society as a whole and try to figure out what is the mind frame of our society, all right? Anything we can identify in society now that we think is like an issue?
COVID.
What's that?
COVID.
COVID. You said COVID. Yeah, absolutely, right? So COVID has done what? It has changed our psychology, make no mistake about it, right? We're all wearing these masks. Now we're all gonna treat each other a little bit different. It's created some sort of, I guess, prejudice against one another, right? Vaccinated versus unvaccinated, right? Tested versus untested. You know, how many people came tested to the party or to the family gathering? How many were untested, right? It's turned extremely political, right? It's made people conspiracy theorists, right? About what the actual reasons behind it is. But make no mistake, it has changed the way you think, it's changed the way you behave, it's changed the way your family behaves, the government behaves, the businesses behave. It's changed the whole entire society. You were gonna say something? Oh, okay. Anybody want to add to that? Besides COVID, anything else going on? What are some sort of mainstream things we think are like changing the way we behave and think right now? What about like TikTok? Is TikTok changing the way we behave and think? How so?
Not popular.
Okay, it's popular, but what is it doing? What is it doing to the people who interact with TikTok, you know, who share, who record videos?
Make people want to use it more.
Yeah, for what purposes? Why do they want to use them?
Entertainment.
Yeah, people want to be entertained more, right? Clout, you say clout? Yeah, all right, people want to have clout, to one another. Hey, look what I'm doing and who I am. What else? You know, also people may think of it as a monetary thing. They're like, oh, I'm gonna get a million viewers and, you know, try to make some money and become famous, right? Internet famous overnight. But these things also change the way you think. You go and watch TikTok all day, go and watch YouTube all day, go on Facebook all the time, right? Go on Instagram all the time, go on Snapchat. What are these things doing to your brain and your behavior? How is it shaping who you are today? Anybody? How is it shaping, you think, human beings today? What is it doing to them? Yes?
It changes the way you think about certain subjects.
In what way?
Like different bias.
Yeah.
People being influential on others.
Yeah, it changes, number one, it changes your compulsion, right? You have the phone, you're gonna go on it, how many times a day, look at the feed, look at who said what, look at the clips, look at the reels. You've created a compulsion in essence, like, yeah, I need this. What would my life be without this? What if I didn't have a phone, a smartphone? What if I deleted Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat? What will happen to you? You may have some withdrawal, you may have some struggles, just like anybody else has it with any kind of abuse, substance abuse. Right? In essence, you need it, it's become part of your existence. But I'm a little bit older, so it wasn't part of my existence at one point in time. So I guess people from older generations can unplug a little bit more than the newer generation, as it being just actually part of your entire existence, you know? You don't know anything probably before social media or the internet. Before we get to this, so dealing back with like social media and kind of the relevance to who we are and who we think we are. We pose classifications in our mind, right? So our mind develops naturally classification. Hey, this person's short, this person's tall, this person's black, this person's white, this person's Hispanic, right? This person is straight, this person is gay. These people are this, these people are that, right? I hate that team. I hate Cub fans. I hate White Sox fans, right? I'm a Red Sox fan. I'm a Bears fan. I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. I'm an independent, right? We classify human beings within our brain as both negative and positive ways, right? We stereotype, we generalize, right? And like we said, these are natural processes, but they can be used in very kind of malicious ways. So we classify people based off the theory of what psychologists call in-groups and out-groups, right? The baby cries from stranger anxiety because that person is an out-group. He doesn't know that person, it's not within his group, it's a new face. The same way that you, I, and everyone else do that with everything we see around the world. We classify things. You're either in or you're out. So we can say, hey, these people are female, these people are male, these people are this, these people are that. We classify them based off this visual perceptions, things like that. These people are black, there's some white people, there are some Hispanics, there are this and that. We classify, stereotype, and generalize just as a natural process. And we do this constantly, right? These are the professors, these are the administrators, right? These are the people with money, these are the poor people. So we have to be very conscious and aware of how we think and how we process our thinking and how we view the world with this stuff. And the more aware you are, kind of the more you can control your behavior, right? A lot of times we're just on automatic. based off repetition and things like that. What time is it? Is that right? 2:30. So yeah, back to psychology. Our definition here is science of behavior and mental processes, root many disciplines that we talked about: social psychology, child and adolescent psychology, clinical psychology. Cognitive psychology studies mental processes, those that occur when we perceive, learn, and remember and think. So right now you guys are learning, you're thinking, you're trying to take in information and make sense and understanding of it. And neuroscience is also part of psychology, right? Because it actually looks at the cognition and perception. And it actually looks at actual brain activity. We talk a little bit about nature, right? Natural selection and evolutionary processes. That's also part of psychology, which deals with like a lot of anthropologists, behavior genetics. How much of you is taken from your parents or your grandparents, right? They've passed on a lot of information to why you act the way you act, right? Why you like certain things, why you're really good at this, right? We see some athletes, right? We see some athletes, their father was an athlete, grandfather was a good athlete, right? And they're probably a good athlete as well too. Nurture works on what nature endows. So yeah, basically, nature is the starting point. Nurture is our conditioning within society. I'm gonna finish up like another 5 minutes, and then we'll kind of go through the syllabus real quick just to learn the expectations of the course. There's also cross-cultural and gender. I deal more with kind of cultural, cross-cultural, indigenous, global psychology, right? Because they think of psychology as a field is really a sort of a Western creation with Freud and those guys. But in other parts of the world where it's a lot of indigenous populations, they really have no idea of what psychology is, right? Things are based off superstition and things like that. Positive psychology, we touched on that, and that's basically used for quality of life, to better your quality of life. 3 main levels of analysis in contemporary psychology are biological, psychological, and sociocultural. So what I'll do here, we'll escape that, and I'll pull up the syllabus. Just do a minute here. All right, so if you need to talk to me or have some office time, just let me know and make an appointment. Most likely we'll do it over Zoom. If you have questions. If not, just always email me. I'm very responsive to email. You'll read all of that, but I'll just get to kind of the grading. All right, so we're gonna have 4 exams, 35 points each. We're gonna have 2 journals. We're gonna have you're gonna get points for selecting a paper topic. We're gonna have a research paper, and then research participation. Have you guys Are you aware of like the research participation they want you to do here? Okay. So it's on the syllabus where you can contact the Department of Psychology, but basically they don't want you to participate in a study, right? And you get points for participating in the study. So here is actually is a requirement for to pass the course. But you're gonna have 20 points, 10% of your grade for research participation. And you'll do just a short write-up of what you participated in and, you know, kind of what the study was about and what did you think of it and whatnot. There's 200 points in total. There's 100% of your grade. And our 4 exams really will be all the content we study, you know, from the beginning point up leading up to the exam. And I'm gonna leave it open-ended questions, which means I'll give analysis on subject matter, right? I don't wanna make it multiple choice. It seems like, I don't find that to be the best way of learning. You know, you're gonna give your actual analysis and in-depth kind of reasoning to the questions that I'm asking. And, that's how that's gonna go. So it's pretty simple, not a lot of work for 16 weeks. And that's that. Were you guys able to see the syllabus on Blackboard? Okay. Yeah. So our first exam will be the 31st. I'll just cover the first 3 chapters here, and then kind of go the same way, 4, 5, 6, and another exam. All right, any questions? Yes?
Where do you recommend buying the book, the textbook?
At the bookstore. I mean, you can find it cheaper online, Amazon, you know, however you wanna get it, whatever is, you know, more affordable for you. But the bookstore, put in an order for the bookstore, so it should be there. Right? But you're gonna need the textbook to keep up. All right, let's have some questions, or they're just off topic. What do you guys wanna ask me? Anything in general? Anything at all? Anything about psychology? Come on, you gotta have some fun. All right, how many people are from the city? City of Chicago. Everybody else is suburban? Okay. So, let's go through majors. Major, what's your major?
Music.
You're a music major. Okay, what do you hope to do with that? Exactly.
I'm not sure yet. I decided to choose it's like church music or music education.
Okay. We got music.
Exercise science.
Exercise science? Yeah, which I think is pretty interesting. You know, I think that's a great field to be in. Everybody's trying to work out, do better. Everybody's trying to be more healthy.
Double major in criminal justice and sociology.
Okay, so this stuff kind of will help, right? Are you trying to go in law enforcement?
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of law enforcement?
Drug Enforcement Administration.
The DEA. Okay. Okay. I have, I'm actually gonna add, I'm probably gonna have 2 kind of guest speakers in. One is my friend Benjamin Wolf, who, former FBI agent, so you might, you know, find him interesting. And he ran for the United States Congress. He's an interesting guy, I'll bring him in, because he's also done work in international psychology. And I'll try to bring a couple more other people, because you know, I want the class to be exciting, right? So we'll mix up, we'll do some videos, from time to time, get some guest speakers in, kind of have off topics. And then also talk a little bit about school, right? Like, what's your expectations of college? What do you expect, you know, college worth it, is it not worth it, what are you gonna do, how's the job market, how realistic are things? This all deals with psychology, right? Because what you think you wanna do today, you may not wanna do tomorrow, once you've experienced doing it for a living, right? So there's a difference. Yes,
Pre-med.
pre-med, okay, awesome. Any particular field in medical? that you wanna go
Pharmaceutical
to?
tech. Pharmaceutical tech.
Pharmaceutical tech, okay. Good, that makes, pretty decent money, I would say.
Elementary division?
Okay. Alright,
Secondary education and math.
alright, so high school, yeah,
Sports management.
sports management, alright. What's that, Rich Paul? LeBron's, agent?
I think so.
Yeah, you ever think about becoming like an agent or something like that?
More like coach.
More of coaching there? Do you coach now?
I helped coach a little bit, back in Kansas. I helped with a former coach of mine. I helped, do indoor arena.
Awesome. From Topeka or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Physical therapy. Physical therapy. That's a really good job as well too. We all get aches and pains as we get older. It's unavoidable.
Journalism.
What's that?
Journalism.
Journalism? Great. Are you working already with, like a newspaper or?
Going into sports commentating.
Okay. That's really cool. I watch a lot of ESPN, so I like that stuff. Yeah.
Athletic training.
Okay. So trainer talk, I like that. A lot of money in that, so too, that's a good field to be in.
Exercise science.
Exercise science, another one, okay.
Nursing.
Nursing? Alright. That's it. You can find a job relatively easy with that, and pay well, so.
Business management,
Okay. What do you wanna do exactly?
I'm not sure quite yet.
Not yet, still figuring it out. Yeah, before I got PhD, I got MBA, right? But you know, I worked marketing firm, downtown office, high rise, downtown Chicago, blah, blah, blah. And, I got very tired of that very quickly. And that's why I started my own business. But yeah, it's a great field to be in. I think, you know, you can make unlimited amount of money to whatever what you do. Yes.
Communications and then minor in marketing.
So communications and marketing. Yeah, which go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Computer science.
Computer science? Oh, yeah. Alright. You, learn how to, do some hacking and stuff too? Well, like security analysts and security, yeah, I got a friend who does that type of stuff. There's big money in that if you work for the government. That government's very good. Physical therapy, okay.
Nursing.
Nursing, another nursing, good.
Business management.
Business management, good.
Forensic nursing.
Forensic nursing? Oh, that's pretty interesting. What do you wanna do, so what exactly would you do with that?
I feel like I wanna do it just to like find justice for
Okay,
the people.
yeah, that's interesting. It's a very specialized field. Business management. Business management. Anything in particular?
Not yet.
Figuring it out, yeah.
Business management also.
Figuring it out, or you know what you want to do?
Exercise science.
Okay, another one,
Exercise science.
another exercise,
Physical therapy.
physical therapy, nursing. No justice? Any agency you wanna work for, or? Not sure. And you? This week, can someone tap her, or? Yeah, that's the psychology of sleeping, right? We're studying your dreams just now. What is, your major?
I'm on the side right now.
Undecided, okay.
Entrepreneurship and innovation.
Interesting, what do you wanna do? What do you wanna start?
I wanna open like my own facial salon.
Oh, nice, okay. A lot of money in that.
Business marketing.
So what do you wanna do with that exactly? No idea, just that? Okay.
Computer science.
Computer science.
Theology.
Theology. Interesting. So you study a lot of philosophy as well too? Alright. You wanna go into just ministry or? So yeah, like I said, I teach at Dominican, right? So, I'm Catholic actually, right? I'm Roman Catholic. And, so actually, I've learned a lot about theology, right? Read a lot about religions and things of that nature, stuff like that. But actually, to be a priest in the Catholic Church, you need 8 years of school. And before theology, is actually you take 4 years of philosophy, right? Which is interesting. You know, you kind of understanding why we exist based on Aristotle, Plato, all the old philosophers, right? We kind of study psychology as well too. But that's something to think about. This all this stuff goes hand in hand with psychology, right? These classifications in our brain, why we think the way we think. Interesting stuff. Did I got to you, right? I asked you in the back?
Yep.
Okay, all right, before we go, any questions? No questions. All right, I'm gonna try to get Blackboard all set up with everything that's on the syllabus. Okay? Yeah, my business, my Bible estate, right, so, with the partners building. I got the Burma building.
I heard you. I'm trying to get out of here, bro.
All right, everyone, see you on Wednesday. Hey, remember, attendance is important, all right? So try to show up to each class. Once again, thank you for joining me. This has been General Psychology, and I'm Professor Zack Ross. Until next time.
This presentation was brought to you by the Zack Ross Foundation, a global philanthropic organization focusing on poverty, education, and mental health. We hope you've enjoyed.